Last night at the Fullerton City Council meeting to talk to the science guy from the Orange County Vector Control Agency, Mr. Cummings. He was very generous with his time, answered all my questions that I asked him, and I'd like to present to you an entire video of our discussion, because anybody that has any questions about mosquitoes or mosquito-borne illness or what vector control is involved in doing to stop the spread of these arboviruses with the different types of mosquitoes that are now prevalent in Orange County, this video is for you folks. And I do think that it's worth your time. It's about 40 minutes or so. I asked a lot of questions and he answered every single one of them. And at the end of the day, what we can both come to agreement on is that we still haven't figured out the source of these mosquitoes. We don't know where they're coming from. They're able to identify what these mosquitoes are. They've been able to test whether they're positive or negative for some of these arboviruses that present a public health threat. But we can agree that they do not know where the breeding sources are yet, and they conjecture that they could be in the underground storm drains, and they're working to deal with that. So my position is there's still a very good possibility that these mosquitoes are being released intentionally, not by vector control, but by possibly other elements in the government or non-governmental organizations that are working together, possibly with some nefarious intent. So until we find the breeding sources and we definitively address the nature of the breeding sources and the solution to the breeding sources, I will continue to oppose any type of aerial assault and even ground-based spraying of people and their homes. And we need to continue to keep our eyes and ears open for what we face is an unseen enemy. These mosquitoes are very small and they're very vicious, and they can be very virulent in terms of what they can carry, whether that be something they naturally acquire or that they can be programmed with, genetically modified to inject, or worse, folks. And in our discussion, you'll hear there is discussion of genetically modified mosquitoes, gene drives, and even bacteria spraying on us, and we'll bulk you in insertion in some of these mosquitoes. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on, folks, and this is a good interview. I was pleased with it. I'm glad he took the time to answer my questions. Mr. Manager?
Yes.
Hi.
We
meet again.
Yes,
Okay, I wanted to ask you some questions. So, I understand a lot about what's going on. I understand you guys are trying to solve a problem. Now, just for clarification, the Aedes aegypti, they're invasive, and none have tested positive for Zika or dengue or anything. Is that correct?
We've had them test positive for West Nile virus.
Not Zika.
Not Zika. Yeah.
So the Aedes aegypti, you've had positive test results for
West Nile virus.
the invasive species has been tested positive for West Nile.
Yes.
As well as the Culex mosquitoes, which are common.
Yes.
So if you have positive results for the invasive Aedes aegypti, why are we not doing daytime spraying? Because they're daytime active. Is that correct?
Yes. It has to do with getting them in certain habitats, certain times, and availability. We need wind movement.
Let's move over here. It's kind of loud.
We need wind movement. We need a variety of factors to work together to do the treatment. So there are studies and we base this on some studies with people, especially back east, have done nighttime spraying for these mosquitoes, and they have had good results.
So nighttime spraying has had positive results for the Aedes aegypti?
Yes, it has. And we're building upon some of that research. There's a couple products that they like to use. There's a publication where they use this, what we call duet product. It has an exciter in it. The idea is that when the mosquito sense this, even though they're resting, even though it's nighttime resting,
it fires them up.
Yeah,
they go
gets them
towards
on,
it.
Gets active, and then that way they can get in contact with the spray. So that's based on some theories and research. A couple publications back east which have suggested that for Aedes albopictus, this was the other invasive mosquitoes, that it worked successfully on that. And these were studies done out of Rutgers University.
So you're the science guy?
Yes.
Okay, these invasive mosquitoes don't travel far, we know that.
Yes. Yeah.
So how have they managed to gain such a strong foothold when we don't have a used tire trade, and this bamboo import issue is not an issue? How are they ending up traveling such vast distances across such vast geographical areas? Because it's not just Southern California; these things are everywhere.
Yes, they've moved that now.
And we're in a drought. So
two species. First of all, Aedes aegypti has been in this country since we know the 1600s. We largely know that because we had cases of yellow fever, which is origins is from Africa.
But you stated tonight that they've been here only since...
Yes, in the southeast of the United States. But in this part of the United States, they've been gradually working their way westward
from the southeast. But they can only travel a couple hundred feet. How do they cross the country?
Movement of products, because their eggs will be laid on containers that used to be wet. They sense
and how long do those eggs survive when they're dry?
They can survive for a couple years.
In the presence of sunlight and extreme temperature?
Not necessarily. Well, they'll be in shaded area. You know, they'll dry out.
Are they sensitive to temperature?
Yes, yeah, but they're also cold hardy. That's the interesting thing on these things too. So that's one species. That's the Aedes aegypti. Now that's, as I said,
and that has been found in Orange County to have been tested positive in your traps for West Nile.
Yes, we have.
How about St. Louis encephalitis?
No, not
How
that.
about yellow fever?
No.
Dengue?
No, well, because we need humans to bring those viruses in, and at least in this region, did not had enough of buildup of cases. We have to have that right mix of people carrying the viruses. The virus has to be at the right level in the bloodstream, and the mosquito has to be
right time.
Right place at the right time. Now, this has happened in the southeast United States. We used to have big epidemics of yellow fever, driven by Aedes aegypti years ago. Your yellow fever was a scourge called yellow jack, and so on like that. Then we had some local transmission of dengue fever in the southeast United States and Texas. Get ongoing cases.
Now, when you say dengue fever, how are these cases being confirmed? Is it a blood test?
Blood test with the health departments.
Is it true that a positive for dengue could also be a positive for Zika or yellow fever, or someone that's been immunized for yellow fever or has had yellow fever exposure?
No, because the antibody tests are discriminant enough to determine which is the type of
So there are specific antibody tests that are being given, because it's my understanding from my medical research that you're going to pop positive for any one of those 5.
They are related viruses. That's why they'll get similar reaction, and then they can actually go into more detail looking at it and see exactly what.
So these tests you're relying on are specific antibodies per specific disease, because these are all arboviruses, right?
Yeah, they are, and they're in a class of a type of arbovirus is very similar related.
So that's why they pop positive on a blood test. Almost all of them do.
Well,
because it's my understanding
chikungunya, for example, is a different virus from yellow fever. These are called flaviviruses from yellow fever.
My understanding that the CDC blood tests that are being used and evaluated will test positive if you've been exposed to or had any 5 of those.
Well, yes, and also, for example, yellow fever vaccination. You can get a titer for that too. But then more discriminant testing can show what type of reaction is it.
Now you're testing mosquitoes.
Yes, the health department or medical facilities will test the patients.
And how discriminatory are those tests that you're running on those mosquito populations?
On the mosquitoes, we use advanced techniques, polymerase chain reaction PCR, and they are specific for the type of virus. So they tell us whether.
So the thing I was concerned with is the mass hysteria that could come from a positive Zika that could actually be someone from Brazil that's had a yellow fever vaccine that just subjected themselves to testing.
That is discriminatory enough. They can tell the difference between whether it's and it has to do with even the amount of titer. For example, yellow fever vaccine, if you had it a while back ago, you'll show presence of that, but usually your titer to this being a flavivirus is not as high.
So you're doing titers to determine.
Well, the health department or the medical facilities do that.
What medical facility do you contract with to run your tests?
We do not do human test testing. That's
but the
all
mosquitoes.
For mosquitoes, we do it in-house.
In-house.
And we go through a qualification every year, evaluation with the University of California and the State Health Department about the accuracy of the test. We get a proficiency panel, and we are evaluated to see how accurate we are every year.
I'm just as concerned as you are with neuroinvasive encephalitis. I mean, it's a real serious concern. We had, a case where a guy's in a wheelchair now. He wasn't when he went on his camping trip. This gentleman in the video stated that he doesn't remember getting a mosquito bite. Was it indeed confirmed that was the method of transmission?
Yes, that's for West Nile virus. Exception of blood donation and the blood.
So in his case, he didn't know he got bit, but
that's true of a lot of people. It's one mosquito bite. If that mosquito is highly infectious and it's in their saliva when they bite, and this is the anticoagulant they inject so we don't feel them, that initial probing even can be injected enough
In
virus.
the 80s carries West Nile.
It can't.
And it
It's
can't
normally-
carry-
It's unlikely, but it can.
But you said you had a positive
Yes,
for
a
a...
mosquito pool last year.
Where was that located?
I have to check on
Was it
that.
Fullerton?
No, I'm going to say we've had both, we had one batch of mosquitoes of Aedes albopictus test for positive for West Nile virus, and then we also had a subsequent batch of Aedes aegypti test for West Nile virus. Two different locations. I have to check. I think it was Los Alamitos for the Aedes albopictus or that area, and then for the aegypti, I have to check in the records. I know it was a northwestern section of the county. No, I think it was towards. Might have been towards the La Habra. I have to check that for.
It's odd that
yeah,
this particular
yeah.
geographic area, Fullerton, is really popping positive a lot. What
Yes,
do we attribute that to? Is it the age, the infrastructure,
Yeah,
the
we
incline,
think-
the draining?
Yes, it's all a combination of these factors that we look over the years. It's a very difficult issue for us on that, and this is
This
what
place
we-
just seems to be,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
a soccer coach and I do
yeah,
practices.
yeah,
I'm
and
getting
you
bit
get
during the
hammered,
day, I'm
yeah,
getting bit all the
I
time.
know, yeah.
Now, what are the symptoms of West Nile exposure? Is it headache and
Those are one of
malaise and
several.
a cough? And
Yeah, you can read about in the literature on that, and
because my kids they had headaches that lasted about a week.
Yeah, he can't.
I was worried. There was
yeah.
no fever. They have good immune systems. I feed them well.
Yeah,
And I don't immunize them, so
Yeah.
they've got really, really strong immune
Yeah,
systems.
it's
And they've had these things happen to them over and over again.
yeah.
And you're telling me
whether
the breeding sources are no more than 300 feet away if I'm getting hit at my house?
They're normally close by because they're
Unless
not
we've got
big,
some wind.
Yeah, big flowers. Latest research shows, and actually University of California, Davis is doing a study on this, they will fly more than that standard. Some of these studies are actually a lot of the basis for how Aedes aegypti flies, behave and so on, is done in the tropical areas. And they have nice, conducive environments. And people live in open houses, which means the mosquito really doesn't have to fly far to bite somebody or fly.
And it's heavy air with a lot of humidity, so it may have a little
yes,
more trouble.
It does not have to fly far, for example, to find a breeding source.
Find a new place.
Here, we're a little bit drier.
That's what perplexes me about this, is
Yeah.
because we've been in the middle of a drought,
Yeah.
and we've been under water restrictions, and there's
Yeah.
not a lot of standing water anywhere.
Yeah.
People have killed their lawns, their gardens,
Yeah,
their
I
trees.
know.
Now, let me ask you a question about gene drives and genetically modified mosquitoes. There have been plenty of information about the fact that they have released millions, tens of millions of these genetically modified mosquitoes. Some of them have gene drives in them, and some of them have been inserted with Wabulchia. Do you know anything about those?
I do not know about gene driving mosquitoes. I don't think that has not been perfected in it. However, there is actually developed at UC Irvine a technique that's been commercialized since that point. And that's a GMO mosquito where they put in
Is it the Wabulchia bacteria that they're?
No, that is not considered a genetically modified organism.
That's an endosymbiont method of...
Yeah, the thing is that what I learned is that, for example, this particular bacterium, Wolbachia, is only one species, but there's varieties in different insects and different species of mosquitoes. And if you get, for example, a lab strain of the Wolbachia, and it's different, and that means rearing all these mosquitoes with that Wolbachia in it, and it's different from a wild type Wolbachia in a region. And it's amazing when they cross-mate, I mean, you release the Wolbachia-infected males. With this one particular strain, this is different from that. That leads to an incompatibility in the offspring, this cytoplasmic incompatibility, and it leads to non-fertile offspring. Or at least
that's the mechanism
offspring,
to stop some of this.
Yeah, actually, it affects egg development, and they do not develop proper eggs.
Now,
So-
what is this method that you're talking about that they're working on at UCI about genetically modified?
That's already been worked out, and that's
Tell us about that.
That's a technique where they inserted a gene in the colony in the laboratory strain on that where the mosquitoes are dependent, the offspring is dependent on actually tetracycline, which can be used in lab colonies, just raisins and so on like this, so that they will these mosquitoes. As immature stages, they're dependent on the supply.
So in the
Now, of course,
absence of it, then they can't thrive.
They cannot. Well, they reproduce, but when they lay, when the eggs hatch and the larvae say, "Well, where's my?"
Yeah, they're inviolable.
Yeah,
because they don't have what they.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the
So-
Terminator seed, Monsanto perfected. If you don't have the solution and you don't dip them, they don't grow.
Yeah, whatever. It's been a technique that has been used overseas, and not has been released, to my knowledge, of use in the United States, and it's been approved, FDA approved, and EPA approved to be used as a technique. A British company, and actually it was originally Oxitec, but that has actually been bought out by another company, and I'm not familiar with the latest on it. But it's been used successfully in some Caribbean islands, for example, as a way of suppressing mosquitoes, and this is that GMO modification on it. But other groups are looking at some gene drive systems and so on like that. But to my knowledge,
not yet. It hasn't been deployed yet.
It hasn't been deployed yet. Yeah, we like that. But that's been some systems on these, some high technology on this sort of things. Again, the ideas on these things, we can digress. We can divert ourselves off to the Mediterranean fruit fly. Now, going back many years ago, the means of controlling them relied very much on some sort of chemical control method. The method to sterilize them had already been well developed, but they had to scale up the system. They were produced in Hawaii, also in some Caribbean, Peru, and I think in Guatemala and Mexico. Anyhow, had to scale up these laboratories to produce massive numbers of these irradiated or sterilized
males, which they release.
Sterilized males, which they release.
It's an ongoing program.
Yeah, inundate. So we don't have to rely. The idea is this population suppression through.
I think they ran those out of the Los Alamitos.
Yeah, they've been doing that for years, and actually
those pink tip prop planes. I remember they were
they've been
under
doing
contract.
They've been doing that for years through Ag Commission. I think I got the latest figure about it. It's about a $10 million.
Are they still doing that, by the way?
Oh yeah,
those planes still fly grid pattern, but not as frequently. I still see them up there.
It's based upon findings and needs on that because it's not cheap, but it's much more of a comprehensive control method. Now, and that's actually been used for other insect controls, so sterile insect technique, SIT or SIT. These concepts have been around and trying to say, well, can we do this for mosquitoes now? So that's why it comes into either use and for, and I want to be, this is clear with the terminology, whether it's sterilizing technique or it's a technique that leads to infer offspring. There are little differences on there, but they are a method that you do population suppression through either
one or the other.
Of a Wolbachia.
Yeah, the endosymbiont or the other mechanism.
Yeah, or you go to GMO methods such as like this technique.
The gene drive.
Yeah, well, that's not gene drive, no. Yeah, it's different from gene drive. But anyhow, there are other techniques to suppress these mosquitoes by a non-chemical mean, but by a reproductive strategy. They're also looking at techniques to sterilize mosquitoes. That's been around for a long time. Mosquitoes, unfortunately, are just much more sensitive, a smaller body than something like a fruit fly or some other insects. We're stronger body, and when you hit them with an X-ray or a gamma ray or something like that, it will get that delicate balance of sterilizing, but still having a viable.
You have too much collateral damage on something framed like a mosquito.
Yeah. So, but they're working. Actually, I was just reading some research on it, and they're getting with X-ray technology more precise on that sort of thing. Now, the next strategy is actually to release them on a broad area. Now,
say that again.
In the next strategy, even if you get them sterilized, because mosquitoes are less or more fragile than, let's say, fruit flies. Releasing them from a plane over a broad area is going to be a more problematic. Yeah, it can do that. People are working on how to release them either from trucks or from
release what through trucks.
If we get to the point of
where we can release
mosquitoes,
sterilized males.
Sterilized mosquitoes to mate with the population.
So they're shooting blanks with the ladies and nothing comes out.
Well, yeah. Well, it's just they'll lead to infertile offspring. So that's the ultimate goal, and hopefully technology can move that way and get to that point.
Now, how about this acute flaccid myelitis that's going on right now? Do you feel that there's a connection? Because they have not been able to diagnose, link it to a specific pathogenic source.
Yes.
So it's still a mystery at this point.
It's still a mystery. Suggestions of a mosquito-borne virus have been out there too, and that's been looked at too, and not been resolved.
I think it's like 30-something states.
Yes.
I don't believe any have been. I think some have been confirmed to California as well.
I'm not. I don't have the.
But do you think that this? I mean, I know you can't comment definitively, but do you think it is mosquito-borne illness that's responsible?
Well, there's been no
for this?
evidence yet. I know it's been checked out. It's been looked at. Is there a particular type of viral agent that we just don't know about? Consequences. You never know on some infections, the low-grade infections that do not lead to a clinical case or something like that. Are there some side consequences that we don't know about? So these are all mysteries on this area. So.
Now, as far as West Nile, I mean, we know that that is a neuroinvasive encephalitic disease.
It can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
So in the majority of cases, they present flu-like symptoms. And in the rare extreme case, you have paralytic conditions that ensue. Are there any contributing factors that result in the paralytic conditions ensuing? Because it's such the exception. Like this gentleman in Newport Beach, there wasn't any discussion about whether he was immunocompromised, if he was on corticosteroids or anything along those lines, chemo. He didn't look the healthiest to me, but that could have been after his ordeal.
Well, that was,
Do we know
I don't-
anything
I don't
about
know.
his?
We can't talk specifically about some cases. The rule of thumb, when you look at this, well, symptoms of West Nile virus affect older people. Now, you can be a healthy older person, and we're within the
So it does
beginning
have a
that-
tendency to affect older people more than
Yeah,
younger
I mean, the general demographic of people get affected by West Nile virus, and you can look this up.
Upper age
Sort of
male.
Like that. Yeah,
Us.
yeah, yeah.
Us, all three of us.
Nearly-
57, 58,
In our
59.
50s.
Yeah, it's just, and as we age, our immune
It's not what it
system-
used to be.
Yeah, it just is, our response is not that. Now, a certain amount of the population too do have underlying medical conditions, and you can
They
read about that.
predispose them to that, yeah.
And that's in the literature about how the proportion of the population may have this. But it still affects perfectly healthy adults too. We get kids affected with it, we get teenagers like that. It's
12-year-old
more,
kid in Texas last year.
yeah.
With West Nile, paralytic, full
Yeah.
manifestation,
Died.
fatal.
Yeah, we've had
Little
cases.
leaguer. It might have been 26, might have been 2016.
Yeah, we've had cases here.
You can-
among
you
the-
can Google it.
Yeah, we have cases among, you can look on the website.
I don't have any doubt we have a serious problem on our hands, and I don't have any doubt that no crisis goes to waste for some very dangerous people that may have agendas, but, I honestly think you guys, you're telling me what you did with this application, ground-based application. I wasn't clear on one thing you had mentioned, and that is you had stated that the numbers of mosquitoes were basically, it was 100% effective in the front yards. Was that based on extrapolation from the things you were carrying around? Is that based on your traps that you had?
We put cages, monitoring sites along a route. And,
So you put your stuff on the property in cages and you
Yeah,
saw
we
if they
had- we
survived
had-
the spraying?
We
Yeah,
work with
yeah,
homeowners to
yeah.
put the cages on their
I
property.
see. So that part I wasn't clear
Front
on.
and backyards, a lot of the same
Okay,
sites.
so your guinea pigs were the canaries in the coal mine, and that's how you
Well,
determined
that's
your
not-
efficacy rate?
Well, they were, this is how it's
That's how it's done?
Yes, this is standard procedure on it, and the point is that everything we do, we follow the guidelines of doing pre-spray, post-spray analysis, current spray analysis, setting out these measures to see that we're effective. We have the right meteorological conditions, we have the right dosage rate, we drive at the right speed, and all these factors together to see that our application is effective and it does its job for what it's intended to do. We don't put the pesticides out there without consideration of need and for safety of the residents and also for efficacy. It's all that blends
So what
together.
triggered this one? You had how many traps came back positive in these two neighborhoods?
I have to check on that, but with the pre-spray, it's on our data. We were getting...
And there were confirmed human cases in these neighborhoods?
There was one human infection.
In this neighborhood?
Within this neighborhood, though, historically, within that
66
general...
in that area.
Yeah, well, 66 overall in infections in the city of Fullerton, but this particular neighborhood has been a high profile, has been a neighborhood.
Is that because of the
concern.
Barranca and the possibly?
Well, we were looking over the area, about 26, 27 infections of the area. So, and actually about 40% of the infections in Fullerton have been in this area. It's just been a problematic area. Old infrastructure area, we've talked to the city
I understand,
about
yeah, you get
this.
to the puddles underground. So are you
Yeah.
treating this with olive oil? How are you dealing with the storm drains?
The storm drains, we have several products on that.
We had
for that.
34 mosquito pools
Yeah.
test positive.
In those two neighborhoods?
31 in Fullerton, 31 in those two.
31 out of 34 in those two neighborhoods?
Yeah.
And then one confirmed human case?
Yes, human.
Two in the city, one in that area.
And for the record, did you confirm the breeding source of these mosquitoes?
Well, that's what we try to do. We have a list of breeding sources throughout.
But did you
the city.
find a hot spot where these things?
No, that's the thing. That's the difficulty about it. You know, it's cumulative. You got some backyard breeding, not a whole lot. You got some street breeding. You got this.
How are you determining breeding locations? Are you using drone surveillance? Are you putting people on the ground with going into backyards?
Historical. We've been in existence since 1947, and we document all our problematic areas, and we have a list on that, and we put those on a rotation about once every 10 days to treat. Now, again, those are the things that we see. We do outreach to people too, to hopefully that modifies their behavior and they do something. That's a certain amount of breeding sources in backyards. kind of unknown because we did plenty of backyard inspections. We did the door-to-door campaign, alerting people.
And you didn't find anything?
Well, we found some. Yeah,
Not enough
some.
to...
No.
Yeah.
So this is
a difficult.
Where's it coming from?
Yeah, we're out there. That's the solve.
We know,
Yeah.
we know where the breeding sources that we know are.
Yeah.
We know where those are, and we treat them regularly and routinely.
And this thing
Those
just keeps
that we
popping.
don't know,
Yeah.
we can't, because we don't know where they are.
Take a look at, here's some of the things very interesting. I just actually did a poster on this, and you know, it's the dynamic of our underground drains and the difficulty.
Well, we got these
that-
corrugated pipes too,
Yeah,
with
that's
those
a big
ribs.
problem.
Yeah.
And I think the only way to deal with that is olive oil or some sort of petroleum, you know,
Well,
surface.
we do a certain amount of that, but what we're investigating is actually.
You got some like hammers that run through these things
Well,
and check
that's
them
what we're
out?
exploring. We're
exploring
doing that. We're taking, you know, cities use
The sewer
system.
cams.
Yes,
Sewer
exactly.
cams.
We're incorporating now. I just did
We're gonna
a.
be-
But you haven't been?
No,
We've
we
done
have.
some testing with it.
Yeah.
Okay, have you found anything?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you did find some breeding pools?
Not, we didn't test Fullerton. We did Fountain Valley and Santa Ana, I believe, parts of Anaheim. Just certain areas that we know are hot spots. We want to get in to see those.
This technology has not yet been adapted for our needs, but.
Does the board of supervisors need to approve?
No.
The money's there?
It's not, it's,
Well, we have to get,
We
we gotta make it work right for
it's
us.
got,
yeah.
it's got,
Yeah.
the application needs to be right for the end result. If it doesn't work, there's no sense in investing large sums of money in something. It's an expensive process because it's a vehicle, it's cameras,
very labor
staff,
intensive, too.
It's very labor intensive.
Yeah.
Looking at CCTV video, checking it out, identifying where there are.
The thing that just really puzzles me about this is where the heck are these things coming
Yeah,
from?
so, now you remember mosquitoes fly, and and I suspect, for example, that a lot of these underground drains are used as flight corridors for them, as mosquitoes. In other words, it's nice and humid in there, and they can be moved around by the wind.
So it is possible for mosquitoes to travel great distances underground in total darkness and find the opening to both breed and
Yeah,
re-enter?
Oh, yeah, that's what they do, and so,
A significant amount of the breeding takes place in underground storm-driven systems.
yeah,
Underground water infrastructure.
yeah.
So do you have any idea how many miles of underground storm drain infrastructure we have in Fullerton?
We do have some figures on that. I can't.
Is it an inordinate amount compared to other
Well,
cities?
there can be a lot, what we do is that we have a lot of underground drains. Now, how many of that part is problematic? You know, we treat the parts that we know about, and that's based upon historical information of exploring around and finding where the areas are most problematic, and that's where we go and do our applications. But what we learn too, because we do our applications from one manhole to one manhole here, let's say there's 100 yards between each manhole, you know, what are you effectively getting in between, especially on some sites that are, that's what I'd like to show you here, especially on some sites that, still downline, I just did a poster on this, where we're incorporating this new technology into our investigations. So one is for detection, surveillance, find out the problematic areas, and then eventually if we can get into the sites, we can actually do treatment on those sites. In other words, we don't have to go from here to here and hope that we get good control. Now, when we get a site routinely under control, we get good results overall, but some of the sites, because the infrastructure is so bad, in spite of our treatment, we still get numbers of mosquitoes that are above what
Because of
we
the
want to see.
aging infrastructure under the
Well,
ground?
we can't get all them, like we're talking about some of these pictures, and it says it can't, oh, there it is. It says, you know, some of the sites, let me see here, come up here. There we go. That's a drain in Santa Ana, a problematic site in Santa Ana. Very low slope, corrugated pipe. You see that?
Water just
Yeah.
backs up.
Yeah, you see, that's just debris and everything in that, so.
And they find their way into those
We have
places.
through the catch basins, and even we see them emerging through the little holes, fingers holes in the manholes. They find it.
So maybe we ought to start screening the manhole
Well,
holes.
those sorts of techniques have been done, but they.
My gosh, how
yeah,
do you screen the entire
No,
system?
that's
It's an
the thing.
impossibility.
We've done that, actually, years ago, Orange County, we tried some experiments, we plugged them up like that, but look at the production out of some of these things. This was a Garden Grove drain. In fact, you can come over here, This is.
Can you tell me the site for what you're showing us here? What's the address to this website?
Well, this is a West Garden Grove. No, this is my poster I did.
This is something you did.
Yeah.
Where can we find this?
It doesn't
I can
exist
give it to
yet.
you. Yeah.
Well, you haven't,
yeah.
you haven't, it's not.
When you're
Yeah.
done with it, I'd
It's
love
not
to see
public
it.
yet.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
here's the deal. I would love to solve.
look at all-
Look at all those in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
See how
That's
they
a
come out
manhole
of
in
there?
Garden Grove?
Yeah, West Garden Grove. We took a step in the drain. Again, this is an old corrugated pipe
Yep,
drain.
I know the
And
ribs.
this was taken in 2013.
I
You
gotta go because
yeah.
my dog's been in the
Okay,
kennel
okay.
I gotta take him out.
Yeah.
And so once again, you're the manager for
Yes.
the, at this point, does the Vector Control Board still have the final say-so on whether they're going to order airless spraying, or has that been transferred to you at this
No,
point?
they still have
They
that.
still retain the yes or the no on that?
Yes.
Hey, thanks for taking the time with us, sir. I
Yeah, my
appreciate it.
pleasure.
And so you're the
Sorry,
chief science guy. No,
sorry,
that's
he's
okay. He's the
Bob's
guy I want to
science
talk
guy.
to.
Yeah,
He's got all the answers.
Bob's been in the office since about 5:30 this morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bob Cummings. He's the science guy at
Yeah.
Vector Control.
Bill
So-
and I are the science guy.
Yeah. But this is the production we can get out of there, And, actually we stepped into it a bit
Most
like
of
that,
the
yeah.
infrastructure is all corrugated, this whole
No,
area.
there's
Not
some
all,
areas,
there's
we don't
some.
know, there's some areas, and what's surprising about it, we don't think much of what we call this little small amount of water that gets.
It's incredible how much
deposited,
you can get in it.
But you
Urban
can,
drool.
It's crazy.
but you'll get, in essence, because it is channeled and funneled into certain areas. This was taken during our drought year, and that was knee-deep water in this.
In December? No.
December,
Yeah,
December.
drought, yeah.
2013, but the point is.
In
we have-
December?
Yes, we have.
In the
almost-
winter time?
During the
Yes,
drought,
yeah,
during
it
drought
hadn't been
time.
flushed out yet, but the point is that there was so much, it's like an underground river in what we have in some of these areas.
Is that water moving, or is it totally?
Very low, that's the problem, because it doesn't.
there's no
move.
movement.
Yeah, there's no movement. That's why actually when we see in some of the things retrospectively in the years, we actually, and this is counterintuitive, actually in our very wet years, we have less West Nile virus problem because we.
Because
think
the water
there's-
moves.
Because we think there's been some good flushing.
Well,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
drought breeds disease.
Yeah, that's a rule of thumb.
How does drought breed disease? That's always.
Because there's fewer water sources, and the fewer
Higher
sources
concentration.
there are, there's higher exactly.
And higher concentrations of pathogenic decomposition.
Well, it's speculator. There are research that suggests this. We got to get it. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
yeah, okay. And
I gotta go.
Yeah.
I don't know what you gotta do.
Thank you for
but
your
I-
time.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, anyhow.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
think
Cummings.
Stanley's pretty upset with me right now.
Yeah.
All right, so for the most part, what we've got here is we've got the underground breeding reservoirs.
Well, that's one. There's a variety of.
Would you say at this point that that's possibly where the majority of these mosquitoes are coming from?
I don't want to ever pin it down for a particular neighborhood. Some areas that is true. Other neighborhoods it may be more on the street above surface. Other places maybe more towards the backyard. It depends very much on the community.
So how much
That's
oil would it take to dump down these storm drains to stop the breeding?
First of all, anything that we apply, we have to apply at a rate, an application rate that meets the criteria, and we can only use approved products for it. There are lightweight oils.
Do
that
we need
put
a
in.
special approval to use things like olive oil or canola oil or cheap vegetable oils that are non-toxic?
we have to use only products that are registered for.
With the EPA for this specific purpose? So can the Vector Control District use olive oil to treat these storm drains?
No, it's not an approved insecticide.
Wow.
Now, we use a lightweight oil though, and we apply at a rate of just 1 to 3 gallons per acre. And the idea is that, now, that's an effective
But
way.
olive oil is extremely effective, is it not?
Well, no, because these oils that are used for these products, and actually we've evolved.
They're like
more. We have a
pesticidal oils?
coconut oil. Yeah, well, they are just lightweight oil. They've been approved for this purposes and been refined. The key thing on that is you have to get them to spread nicely. And if the oils don't spread well, then they're not going to be effective against control.
So you have to have a good controlled dispersal mechanism. You
Yeah.
can't just dump it down the sewer
Correct.
manhole
It
cover.
has to go like that. Now we use actually a coconut oil product now too. That's been incorporated on that, and that moves up sort of on the more environmentally friendly oil. It's only about 10% petroleum product now, and the majority now is a vegetable byproduct, meaning coconut oil on that. So it's called Cocoa Bear. You can look it up. And,
Okay.
Anyhow. So even if you get to the site again, but if you're doing a technique where it's manhole to manhole, you can't, how well does our material get from one place to another, especially if there's blockage and so on like that. Here's another drain too, very interesting too. We looked on this again where we got the robot in there. There was nothing wrong with this drain as compared. See, it looks nice in
Typical
there.
sewer, yeah.
No, storm drain, not
Storm
sewer.
drain, nice
Yeah.
smooth surface,
Yes,
good
exactly,
flow.
but the slope is so, no, that's the problem.
There's no flow 'cause the slope is so-
The slope is so low. So we found mosquitoes breeding right inside there, and right in there. And this is
Now,
again underground in
When you
neighborhoods.
deal with these
And
underground,
these are adult mosquitoes flying, you know, of course, you can see them as I blow them up, and even over here, you see them flying around. This was uncovered by this rover we put in there. So that's where
which
we...
is common to what the sewer departments use.
Yeah,
So,
well, we want
in
to
these
get
storm
that, it's not
drains,
been adapted for all...
is this an equal opportunity breeding point for Aedes aegypti as well as the
We
Culex and these other
don't, we
varieties?
don't know yet now from reports, both even overseas, in other countries, and some other parts found, at least in Southern California, they are finding them in, no longer just in backyards, but in some of the infrastructure area.
The invasive ones?
Yes, they found it in gutter water in the water. They find them in drains, and these are not the flower cups, but people will have these little sump drains in their backyard. Some areas of California, this is real problematic in the Fresno area for the agencies that are stuck with these invasive Aedes aegypti. They're really bad in some of these communities.
Are they like P-traps? They don't have a cover on?
Well, the drains are open, but what they did, they put this was years ago in the 60s when they built them, and again, not thinking about all the other consequences involved. They had corrugations, these corrugated, flex corrugated, nice to flex them, so
Yeah,
corrugated.
and puddles to block the
Yeah, exactly.
backflow.
So you got the drain in somebody's backyard, and that drain goes underneath the property and exit at the curb to the gutter. And that very slow flow, but also this corrugations.
It's conducive to,
And
and so
that-
Aedes are being found in those?
Yes, Aedes, that's the big problematic, that's the one thing that in their neighborhoods, in spite of all the efforts to educate people, in spite of people's own efforts to do the dump and drain around their house to prevent Aedes breeding on their property, they got this infrastructure that is just...
It's conducive to
Yeah, and
basically
then it's
undoing
just-
all of their
in
efforts.
spite- Yeah, in spite of their efforts, and that's what's making really difficult on it. So this is where we try to look for some sort of, I can take this off, transformative sort of step in saying, well, can we go to some sort of large area control method? Aedes, that group up there is working with the working on the Wolbachia technique. They've been now a couple years into this. I think this is their third year, and they're evaluating.
I read that they're releasing, I think the 20 million were
this-
released last summer.
Yeah, they've been doing this now. This is their third year, and again, they've scaled up each time.
I think Google was involved in
Yes, there's
as
a
well.
parent company,
Alpha,
Google,
yeah,
Alphabet Google
yeah.
has been involved with this. And
So once again, to confirm, Alphabet Google has been involved in the, I understand they're involved in the gene drive development as well.
That I can't say.
But they're involved with the Wolbachia thing.
Wolbachia,
Yeah.
yeah. And this is, so again, this is just having one strain of this bacterium be, the laboratory
studied
strain, being different from a wild strain, leading this.
To the incompatibility of the offspring.
Yeah, exactly, so.
So how do you, Mr. Cummings, how do you explain, we've had droughts, we've had rains, we've had high years of rain, and we even had these invasive mosquitoes many
Well,
years
just-
ago. We had yellow fever many years ago. We've had
We've never had it in this area. Yellow fever was problematic in the East Coast.
or malaria, excuse me, I'm sorry, when the
Yeah,
people
we
came home
had
from the
right-
war.
We had the right, well, even before that too.
It was here.
Well, malaria, because that is again a parasite that is in the human population for...
The Plasmodium
Yeah,
falciparum.
Yeah, there's other species. We had Plasmodium vivax, the main one in California. But
So
anyhow,
that's been here before, and the vector has been here for some time.
Again, people brought that in. The mosquito, this particular species of Anopheles mosquitoes that can do it, has been in California. That was always
And it's
there.
still here.
Yes, we have them in certain parts of the county. We have them.
Now,
especially
can
some of the
those
west-
transmit Zika, West Nile, dengue, yellow fever? No?
No, not to my knowledge. One key thing on that is that these viruses are pretty specific for this
That's
group of
really
mosquitoes.
scary, because these are the perfect weapon.
What's that?
These mosquitoes, these Aedes aegypti, I mean, if you were some psychotic eugenicist,
Well,
you could release these
First of all,
things.
they've been around for a long time. Now let's back up a second. Before they got here to California, they were working their way west from east through Texas. They've been established reports in the 80s in New Mexico, then into Arizona, and these are very dry environments. problematic in Arizona. Now again, think about that.
Yeah, it's our behavior, and
Well, yeah, we've set up people like to have.
we've set up rest areas for them to fly to and reproduce.
People set up these mini semi-tropical or tropical environments in backyards. We like to high humidity.
Yeah, those and those bromelade type plants.
Bromeliads.
Yeah, they have that little water reservoir at the top.
And
so-
but it's flower cups and all that too. So flower pots are a big factor, and as I mentioned, some of these drains. But again, as time, and one thing's been looked at the genetics of the Aedes aegypti, and they found it's a very adaptable mosquito.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, so in other words, its origins are tropical mosquito, and over time it has established habitats where it's adapted to. Now, if you look at some of the particular characteristics of Aedes aegypti, Aedes aegypti in one area of the world versus, let's say, its origins or some tropical, it is a different mosquito. I mean, it's the same species and all that, but there are some, you can look at the genetics, and there's just some differences in that are believed to make it so that it is become adaptable to that habitat compared to its tropical origin.
Yeah.
You know, they've done that. It's been a slow process, as I said. Aegypti's been here easily from the 1500s. That particular species, most likely.
And that's the vector in Brazil that was responsible for Zika transmission. Is that correct?
It's considered the best transmitter. Other species
The most effective.
Yeah, the other species of mosquitoes.
I want to
can
ask
do
you
it.
another question. Can you tell us a little bit about your credentials? You're the science guy for the department, is that correct?
Yeah,
Tell
yeah,
us
yeah.
about your educational background and your credentials.
Well, I've got a bachelor's in biology and engineering. I worked as an engineer for a while, and then, excuse me.
And how long have you been with the Vector Control Agency?
I've been working in the field in and out since 1971.
So you're a boots on the ground guy that's got a science
Yeah, I
background.
worked overseas. Hi, Rick? Yeah. Hi, Rick? Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I gotta keep going. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye. Yeah, I've been working in the field for many years. I worked for ag commissioners, and I've also worked in
So you know what works.
I worked also as an engineer too.
So you know what works on the ground,
Yeah.
and you know what chemicals work and what don't.
Yeah, I've worked.
You've been around all of that.
My first job in the field was actually in 1971. You know, I was a part-timer.
Another question I had before I forget to ask you this question is I am under the impression that Zika has never been medically established to cause microcephaly. Are you aware of any medical connection to microcephaly from Zika infection?
There are good papers on that in the literature, and that have shown that.
Because we've got a lot of people that are really concerned. These mosquitoes are scaring people, and I know you're doing what you can to avert those fears, at the same time deal with this problem.
Yeah.
So my hope would be that you find a way to get into these underground storm drain systems and really vet them out and figure out what the heck is going on. Because at this point, we're at a loss for the source. Is that correct?
I know that is true. And just to clarify this mosquito, because it's so human-centric, it's, you know, we call them these sorts of things like rats and so on. We call them commensals, meaning they live with humans.
These things like the house.
Yes.
They like the cars.
Yes,
they like
exactly.
hanging out with us.
They
follow us around.
They're very dependent on us, you know, so this is co-adaption with us. And so now you can take, just for example, you can take 100 of these Culex mosquitoes or local Culex, and you can take 100 of the Aedes aegypti. Most of those Culex,
They're going to just split.
well, they're prefer to bite birds, and a certain amount will bite humans. But
In the
it's gonna be
absence of
minor.
birds, they'll choose us.
Yeah, some will.
It's the other way around with these things.
Yes, exactly.
And I've noticed symmetrical bites on my body, the same spot, the same height on opposite legs
What's
or arms.
interesting about this mosquito too is that it bites. It's called a nibble biter, nibble feeder.
And it'll make a line of different spots it'll go after.
If it doesn't get the full blood meal off that first little nibble, it'll bite again. It's very cryptic, and it does that. So that same mosquito can bite several times, and until it gets full of blood. What that means also, that makes it a great disease transmitter, because maybe it doesn't get the full bite from just you. And this has been documented by blood meal studies, where actually they look at the blood in it, and this was actually done overseas in Southeast Asia. And they could look at the blood of some of these mosquitoes, the blood that they picked up, and find out that you could find 3 people's blood. So in other words, They bit three
Yeah,
different people.
it's very frightening what they're
yeah.
capable of.
Yeah, so if one of these things is infected with a virus, just in that biting cycle, it can infect several other people at the same time. So that's why it's very, very, it's just a tough mosquito. Lots of research been going on now. You know, dengue fever is considered, which is all through the tropical belt. It's come in the United States a few times. And historically, it used to be in the United States too, but in recent years, it's considered the most common vector-borne or mosquito-borne disease, qualify that, mosquito-borne disease in the world. It's all through the tropical belt. So
Nothing yet here on dengue.
not here, you know, we have to get that. It would be a combination of enough mosquitoes and enough people having it. But we are at that situation where if you get the right mix at the right time, you know, you do get somebody who comes back overseas and they do have
Exposure.
overseas, and they do have the exposure and they got the virus going on it at the right time, and they were, as you're experiencing, in the right neighborhood, the block or whatever, mosquitoes could pick it up and they could transmit it. Low probability now, but there's a possibility now exists, and that's what we're concerned about on this sort of thing.
So,
yeah.
one more question, because you've been
Yeah.
very generous with your time, but as a public
Yeah.
servant, I would expect
Yeah.
that, and I do appreciate that. What are we going to do to fast track the surveillance systems that need to be placed in our drains under the ground, our sewer systems? What's going on at the Vector Control Agency right now? I mean, what do you have on the drawing board to get these cameras into these tunnels?
Well, that's the new technology that we have to explore, you know, so we have to adapt it, and that's just one of our strategies, and, you know, one technique in one neighborhood.
Because we haven't found the source above ground.
Yeah,
for the
you know,
breeding.
any-
So it's got to be under the ground, or either that, or somebody's flying this stuff in and releasing it.
Well, we're not doing that.
That's the third option I don't want to think is happening.
No, first of all, they're also problematic in Los Angeles County, other parts of, like I mentioned, Fresno, other parts of Central California. Bad problem in San Diego. They're also in northern Mexico, along our border in Baja, and in the California border, across on the sides of Mexico. They're problematic in Arizona, problematic in New Mexico, and of course in the southeast United States, and then parts of the East Coast. So,
But as far as Orange County, we got a lot of money and a lot of big property
Well-
tax rolls here. Do we have first-class equipment coming our way to get in there and inspect these storm drains?
well, we have to develop, again, this sort of technology has not been transitioned from the sewer technology to the
Do
storm
we need to
drain
commission
distribution.
some engineering students over at UCI
Yeah.
to invent something? I mean,
Well, there's other schools and so on.
when is your next board meeting?
We're always the third
The third Wednesday? Is
Third
it
Thursday.
Over off of Lewis
of
and
the
Garden
month.
Dover, what, 3:30 in the afternoon?
Yes, 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, okay.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Bob Cummings, and he's the chief, are you the chief scientist for the Vector Control
You
Agency for
can
the
call
most
me
part?
that, I have experience.
40 years of experience
In and out of the
dealing with
field.
rats and mosquitoes.
Well, in and out, and also, I have a master's degree in biology from Cal State Fullerton.
Master's degree in biological science.
Yeah, and I've worked in this field for
In
many
Houston,
years.
do we have a problem?
Obviously so.
Okay.
And
Mr.
we're
Cummings,
trying to work on it.
thank
Yeah,
you for the
trying to
interview,
solve it.
sir.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you for your time. Agencies are exploring the techniques of area-wide, mean widespread applications of this bacteria, BTI, which is organically rated method of controlling mosquitoes.
Tell us what BTI stands for, bacteria?
Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis. It was discovered in Israel in soil bacteria, as a soil bacterium, actually on mosquitoes in Israel in Negev Desert in 1976.
And so what is the concept with involving this? You're going to introduce this into,
Well, what's being explored has been used in Florida as means of control in some other problematic areas, and we are looking at two
and the
other
mechanism,
agencies.
is it?
You put it in a truck, you
Endosymbiont
have...
similar to?
Well, no, it's a bacterium that went in and infects the gut of mosquitoes. It has 4 agents, 4 proteins in it, that when they ingest it, it affects the gut and kills them. It kills mosquito larvae in the immature stages. So
Are you aware of this bacteria being released, sprayed over areas of the United States? Because it has been in the past.
No, that's one of the ideas that's exploring that you get the right type of truck.
And this is
right type of
BTI.
truck. Yeah, BTI, and you again broadcast it over a large area because you could get it in people's not only their front yards but in their backyards, to take care of mosquito
What
breeding
does it
sources.
do to
again.
other bugs and spiders?
No, it's very
and-
selective.
It's
for
selective.
This. Yeah, it's very selective.
Is this genetically engineered bacteria?
No.
It's just a specific naturally occurring
Read up on this
BTI.
discovery, and it's actually, for some people, in consideration as a discovery, it stands way up there as a very revolutionary and important discovery. Again, science is full of all sorts of serendipitous moments, and that's true throughout its discovery.
And this could be one of them.
Well, it was at the time in this discovery, an Israeli researcher was going through the part of Israel, the Negev Desert, having that trained eye, saw some water with dead mosquito larvae, and was wondering
was
why.
smart enough to at least take a
exactly.
sample and study it.
And this has actually been so much of our stuff is done through soil
Accidental
sampling.
discovery.
Many of our stuff, you know.
We got to keep looking.
Yeah, anyhow.